You mentioned having a decentralized exchange, you sort of give the freedom to the community of picking any kind of tokens they want to be listed and being traded on, right? But then because it's under the name of Binance, I assuming there are also accusations by community, by users, and saying that, or like, you Binance endorsed this token. But I think most recent case, what I heard was a collapse of bakery swap, and I saw people were saying, Binance, you should like be responsible for this and that. So, what are some of the lessons we can learn from, things like this, and what's gonna be the next step for Binance in the future when similar, I'm assuming there will be a lot of things like this happening as long as you try to make everything more on a more decentralized side. So just curious, what's the next step?
Yeah, I think, there's no perfect solution for that. There's always trade-offs. So by using the Binance brand name, there is a lot of users who are who give. I think there's a much larger number of users who give trust, credibility to the Binance name. So and Binance is one of the key players even in the sort of Binance Smart Chain or Binance Chain ecosystem. Right now, the ecosystem is relatively young, and we are one of the stronger forces of pushing adoption and also funding some of the projects, or even funding some of the helping some of the community projects by giving them a grant or something. The flip side is, yes, some users do confuse anything that has a Binance name with a centralized entity, and they want to complain to us when something fails. So there's always a small number of users that do that. And Bakery Swap or any project on, there's probably, I would say there's probably more projects that failed on Ethereum, but nobody complains to Vitalik. So I think it just takes time for people to realize that, look, the projects on Binance Smart Chain are not ran by Binance. They are decentralized projects. Anybody can issue them. We have no control on that. And there's also a lot of confusion, even with a slightly more successful projects like Burger or Pancake. Those are not, I don't know who the founder of Burger is. I never met them, or I read a blog post describing who they are, but I don't really know them personally or have zero interactions with them. So there's a lot of confusions, but I think over time people will come to understand that Binance Smart Chain is a blockchain, and applications that's built on top of it are not really associated with us directly. So I think over time people understand, but there will always be some people who get confused and complain. It is what it is. So we'll just have to deal with it.
I see, I understand that. But you did just mention that Binance are funding some of the projects that's kind of popular among the community. So I guess that also show endorsement from Binance, and maybe it's as like a promotion for some of the people in the community. They might go to this because, oh, I see Binance is putting money on this project. It's probably very promising. So how do you make the selection of choosing the projects? Are there certain kind of detailed process to make sure to avoid, I say, like, what happened with Bakery Swap, things like that?
Sure. So I think so. There's a couple of different things. There's the sort of we issued $100 million fund for the ecosystem fund, which is very much similar to the Ethereum Foundation, where they give grants to projects in the community, promising projects in the community. But with any investment and endeavors, especially in a large number of, if any investment firm or VC or just any investment vehicle that invests in a large number of projects, there's always a very high number of failures. So even if you look at the top VCs, they in their portfolio, there's probably only 10% that really hit it big. But those and 90% of the portfolio probably either a complete loss or barely break even or struggling along. But the 10% that do well typically do very well, and they more than make up for the 90% that fail. So from an investment point of view, from the fund grant point of view, the funds when we grant funds to developers, we have different stages. Some of them are very early stage, just like a single developer concept that they just develop a proof of concept. So we just give them a grant of, say, like, I don't know, a couple $1,000 to like 10, 15K. And then they go develop their thing, and there's no equity discussion. We don't get anything back. So it's really the thing that we want to promote is for them to develop on Binance Smart Chain, And those projects have a very high chance of failure. So investment or even a grant by Binance does not mean that it's going to be a solid project at all. So we're just pushing the sort of innovation, and we're just giving more developers chances to try something. And then there's the sort of Binance Labs, which invests in slightly more mature products. So like when there's a team, there's probably, there may or may not be some equity or tokens. But again, even that, in my view, 90% of projects will fail. And then there's the Binance Launchpad. For Binance Launchpad, we select projects much more rigorously. So we typically spend 9 months to a year talking with the team, making sure they're developing, etc. But even then, I would say there's going to be a high degree of failure, probably hopefully less than the Binance Labs investments. And then there's the projects Binance lists. So Binance now, historically we've been listing projects fairly aggressively, but people have came to trust Binance to the point where they complain when we list a new coin, like a fairly new coin, which is highly volatile. So we now split into two. There's the main Binance listing. There's the sort of innovation zone. In the innovation zone, investors have to answer two questions. The first question is, how likely are you going to lose money? Is it more than 50% or less than 50%? If they answer that less than 50%, we don't allow them to trade in that innovation zone. So people have to go in with a mindset that there's a very high chance of loss. And then the second question we ask is, if there's a loss, do you blame do you take responsibility yourself, or do you blame the exchange? And of course, if you blame the exchange, we don't allow those guys to trade. So we really want to, we now have a split listing now. So we have an innovation zone, which we can now list higher risk or newer coins. So I don't think, so basically, Binance are not able to solve the problem that anything Binance invests in or give a grant is guaranteed to be successful. That's not possible. I think we just have to increase the user education and also separate the user access so that the normal retail users don't access they don't access the high risk newer coins. And even if they do, they have to show that they possess the right mindset. So we're doing those things now. So it's not an easy problem to solve. And I don't think any investor can say, okay, look, I'm gonna every project I pick are gonna be very strong projects. If we do that, then most of the trading volume, there's a large percentage of trading volume on newer coins that are hot. If any exchange that says, okay, we're going to list only really proven coins, they're not going to be able to list those, and they're going to be like 2 to 3 years late. So some exchanges are following that. That's okay. But Binance has always started to say altcoin exchange. We always offer a large number of selection so that we provide people access to those coins. So it's a tricky problem, but we do try to address it, but it's never going to be perfect.
I see. So it sounds like investors should make their own decisions wisely instead of blaming on exchange all the time when they're kind of losing money.
Yes. So I think, look, there are a lot of traders who make a lot of money on trading the same selection of coins. And when they enter, when they exit, how they react to different news is their choice, and everybody does it differently. There's a lot of guys who make a lot of money trading on Binance, and there's a lot of guys who actually do lose money trading on Binance. But when people make money, they don't credit the exchange, saying, "Oh, the exchange did an awesome job." It is really, honestly, their own trading decisions. But when they lose money, some of the less mature traders do want to blame other people. And they want to blame the exchange because we're the centralized entity. But we are going forward. We are trying to differentiate between the users' different risk appetites and have them have different access. So, but fundamentally, I do think that users should take learn that they need to take a larger responsibility for their own trading actions. Just because Binance lists a coin doesn't mean they have to buy it. So I think that part we still have to educate, especially with the mass adoption that's going to come. A lot of the more retail users may have that mindset. So we just have to do more education on that.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. And you talk a little bit about investment and Binance putting money in like DeFi sort of investment. So you do see like a lot of projects going to fail anyway. So since we're talking about kind of money, I'm also curious. I think you mentioned previously in other speech about how running a decentralized exchange is much cheaper compared with running centralized exchange. So will you be able to sort of, I'm just like very curious, sort of doing like a breakdown of, you know, how much more expensive, like what are exact the costs compared with decentralized exchange coming from centralized? That's just like really, really like, you know, not a great thing to have for centralized exchanges.
I think the costs are pretty significant. The cost differences are pretty significant. I think it's probably on the order of 5x or 10x more expensive to run a centralized exchange. So when you're running a decentralized exchange, you can have a small team of developers and you can write a smart contract and that's your exchange. And you got to make sure that the smart contract is relatively bug-free so that there's no exploits or hacks and it's relatively secure, and that's about it. And you deploy it on Ethereum or Binance Smart Chain and people trade against it. And there's very little infrastructure you need to maintain. There's very little compliance. There's no KYC, no AML. Those things are very costly. You gotta, in order to do those things, you gotta work with other external vendors for KYC, AML, and you gotta have a pretty large risk and compliance team to handle that. And then if you handle fiat, you gotta work on like banking relationships, payment service provider relationships, reporting, etc., and getting licenses. And then the centralized exchanges holding users' funds, holding custody of users' coins is actually a very big responsibility. And having a large secure infrastructure to do that, in order to hold a large secure wallet. So Binance supports about like 300 different coins, about like 150 or 200 different I think about 100 different blockchains, which means 100 different wallets. Having the infrastructure to secure that, to make sure that the hot wallet is able to do fast withdrawals so that when people withdraw, they get the funds very quickly. And then the cold wallets store the majority of the coins, but then there's a way to transfer back and forth. So all of those things are really, really hard to do, and they're very expensive. So the decentralized exchanges they don't have to do any of that. So in theory, it is cheaper to run a decentralized exchange. But right now, the decentralized exchanges don't have very high performance. They don't have very high throughput because the blockchains are slow. So their transaction numbers are fairly limited, to be honest. They're limited to like a couple, less than a couple hundred, or some of the faster ones can do a couple hundred, but they're not, or can do a couple thousand, but they're not very popular. So so it is cheaper to run a decentralized exchange, but they don't have very high capacity. So with running a centralized exchange, we have so much cost that people don't see. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars on security, making sure that people cannot attack our system, the DDoS attacks, which take a lot of money to defend, and KYC, AML, lawyers, finance people, all of those things. So with a decentralized exchange, you just work on the smart contract and you just deploy it. So it's actually much simpler. So we'll see how these two fields develop. I do think eventually with the development or advances of technology, the speed of decentralized exchanges will increase. And then at some point, and the ease of use of wallets and how to securely hold your own coins with backups, etc. I think those things will improve. And one day, I think decentralized exchanges will gain more volume than centralized exchanges. And I'm actually really looking forward for that day to happen.
I see. Yeah. So sort of taking advantage from both centralized exchanges, also decentralized exchanges, kind of combining together. That's, I guess, what I'm seeing Binance trying to do that at the moment. So I guess like what's the next steps for Binance in terms of either DeFi or, you know, smart chain, or what's with your Binance chain? Anything you want to share?
So we don't really have a lot of big plans. So we grow much more organically and I think we grow much more like a decentralized organization compared to any of the centralized organizations. So for example, even Binance Smart Chain, about 9 months ago, the guys were debating between doing a dark pool or doing a smart chain because supporting smart contracts on Binance Chain. And we wasn't sure. We're just like, okay, what do we think we should build? We don't really know. Why don't we try? and then the guys built a smart chain compatible blockchain. And the release of that, the timing is actually very lucky because right now Ethereum is very, very congested, and this is a Ethereum compatible blockchain. So we don't really have a lot of big plans, but we do want to continue to invest and continue to push adoption in the DeFi space. I do believe if we look at the sort of slightly longer future, like say 5, 10, 20 years, DeFi is going to be bigger. So we just want to push. I have the mentality of that we cannot foresee innovation. So we just experiment with a bunch of different things and something will stick. And when something sticks, we want to push we want to learn and also push our innovation in the same space. So we take a much more organic approach to growth. So we just try a bunch of things and see what sticks. So we don't really have a lot of big plans, but we do hope that Binance Smart Chain will be able to solve some of the capacity issues that Ethereum is facing. And then we also want to offer on the CeFi front that competitive service offerings that can compete on with the features on DeFi. So, and on CeFi right now, given the Ethereum gas fees are so high, we can actually offer much cheaper, much higher return alternatives. So we will continue to offer that.
So I guess like my other question is just like, as if we're seeing more success on Binance Smart Chain, what Binance.com going to get off on that since it's decentralized? Where's your main profit is going to come from?
So basically we own some BNB, so that's it. So like if you look at like when Ethereum does well, how does Vitalik benefit? I think initially he holds 0.8% of the Ethereum in circulation. So it's a pretty significant amount, and that's good enough. So we feel that we're not too worried about that. So we like if Binance Smart Chain or the Binance ecosystem grows, the BNB will benefit, and we still have pretty good stakes. Well, we have very large stakes in BNB. So that itself is able to help us. And we do foresee that we will also build other dApps ourselves. We have such a large team now. If the centralized exchange business is decreasing, some of those guys will be freed up to do more projects, and they will probably take up decentralized projects. And hopefully some of those projects will be popular, and there will be token incentives or other economic structures that will make sense. So in my mind, I'm never worried about the business model. I'm always much more worried about do we have users using the product? So if you build something that people use, there's value. So that's utility value, and you can typically the business model is quite easy to figure out. There's always multiple options for business models. So the key is to build something that's useful for people so that people use it. So we're much more focused on that. So I'm not worried about it. So today I actually don't have a business model per se for any decentralized finance, etc. But I'm sure that there will be very valid business models for developers contributing to those ecosystems. So I'm not worried about the CeFi exchange being disrupted.